Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis,
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro
and welcome to the NYRA Bets Road to the Kentucky Derby.
and the Kentucky Oaks.
Well, hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to the second episode of the Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. So glad that you're joining us. We're back with another episode this week, looking at some of the races in the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks prep from last week, talking about some new additions to our list as we expand that list of top contenders for these two races, as well as looking ahead to the prep races this coming week taking place at Oaklawn Park. Now, before we get to that, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is completely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos are dropping on the channel. We got a lot right now between Pegasus World Cup previews. Acacia Clement joined me for the first episode of Snowbirds. We're going to have some in-depth previews for the races at Oaklawn, capping the card for the entire Pegasus Day, as well as Kaylie and I having a lot of fun content up here together also. So make sure to press that like and subscribe button right away. Kaylie, last weekend, we had 3 overall preps, 1 Derby, 2 Oaks. This coming weekend, an Oaks and a Derby. I mean, it's kind of that time of year. It's starting to get pretty exciting.
It's getting really exciting for sure. And can't say I am jumping to take a lot of the horses that came out of those races, but I do think that there are some horses that are pretty interesting that maybe didn't win, but I'm excited to see run back and get another chance. So thought it was a fun little round of preps this past weekend.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's so critical I think we are so quick to judge and so quick to try to anoint a Derby horse, an Oaks horse. Everybody who tries to find their Oaks or Derby horse that we sometimes get enthralled with a performance early on. And we quickly want to put that horse into a top position just simply because they want to prep race. But I agree with you. None of the winners this past week really made an impression on my top 5 list, which we'll get to in a little bit. But listen, let's not slight those winners and talk about some of those races a little bit because there were some interesting efforts and some interesting things, like you said, maybe for second and third place horses to take out of that race to move forward with. And we'll start up here in New York with the Busanda, which was aptly won by the horse Running Away, who did exactly that. In gate to wire fashion for Wesley Ward. This was a daughter of Gunrunner who started her career on the turf, switched to dirt last time out, and now has a stakes victory. And this was going a mile and an eighth. Kaylie, what did you see from this race? What did you take away from this race as I show everyone the stretch run here from the quarter pole home?
Yeah, I thought this horse obviously ran a great race, went gate to wire as expected. This horse was also really the only speed of the race, though. Didn't really have to face or didn't face any pressure whatsoever. This horse, if you look at her past performances, she's never really had to pass a horse before. So that's really just my one, not concern, but I'd like to see her have to win a race in a different way, maybe face some more pressure next time out. And then the horse that ran second, My Sharona, seems like she might have a little bit of I don't know if it's a hanging problem or she needs a little more encouragement or a different setup to be able to pass horses. But I mean, this is like the third time where that horse looked like she was supposed to go by and hasn't. But yeah, Running Away, I thought obviously ran a great race. Not to take away her win, but I definitely want to wait to see her face some pace pressure next time out for sure.
I think that's fair. She earned an 81 buyer speed figure for that effort. And obviously, the thing to take away from the effort was she did the mile and an eighth. So you get the 9 furlongs, which is longer than the other preps that are a mile and 70 yards or a mile and a 16th. But as you mentioned, there was no pace pressure there. I'd imagine it's going to be a different story if she faces pace pressure. And so for me, she's a little bit of a bet against next time out. She was my choice on Saturday. But like I said, I think if she draws into another race with some speed, that starts to become a little bit more concerning to see what she's capable of doing. But an interesting horse, nevertheless. And we got to give a shout out to our girl Ruth, who you and I both liked underneath in that race. And we were standing right there at the gate when it opened, and she just stumbled out of the gate. And that was a classic example of that race being over before it started. She kind of tried to make a little bit of a middle move, but as you typically do, flattens out coming for home. Would like to see her get another shot, though, and I think you feel the same way.
Yeah, she had a really bad start. It wasn't even
Yeah.
just that she stumbled. I think she like tried to get up and she stumbled again.
Yeah.
And I think she showed a lot of fight honestly at that start. I know it took a lot of her energy to kind of get back in touch with the rest of the field after stumbling like that, which definitely affected her throughout the rest of the race. But I thought she was beautiful too in the paddock. And I don't know, I'm excited to see her run back again. Obviously, not to get too excited, she ran 258 buyers back to back, but those were also, that was her debut and an unfortunate trip. So I'm excited to see her run back for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think so. And I think My Sharon is a nice horse as well. But like you said, maybe the blinkers help, if Ray Handel, the trainer, decides to go that route. And yeah, it's interesting. I think also a horse like Running Away, and this kind of goes a little bit into what we're going to talk about with the Silver Bullet Day down at Fairgrounds. Maybe she's a little bit of a sprinter. Maybe we see her this summer up at Saratoga sprinting 7 furlongs, a little bit like Ways and Means did this past year. So we'll see. But a very nice horse, though. And again, you put gun runners on the dirt, good things happen, folks. I'm just going to offer that advice free of charge. So listen, let's head down to the Big Easy, though. That's where the big preps were. The Silver Bullet Day for the Oaks, the Lecomte for the boys. Silver Bullet Day coming a little bit early in the card over a sloppy sealed track. So obviously that's something to take into consideration. But kind of same song, second verse down there. Another horse, Simply Joking, this time wins gate to wire fashion. But you picked up some interesting tendencies with this one coming down the stretch.
Yeah, I think this horse faced a lot more pace pressure than Running Away did in the Busanda. The number 4 Drexel Hill was kind of like breathing down this horse's neck a lot of the race. But yeah, Simply Joking, as expected, broke on top, was able to get out in front on a sloppy sealed track, and no one was really making up any ground. And towards the late stages of the race, besides the number 8, Bless the Broken, who got up for second, who I thought ran a really great race. But this Simply Joking, this is now her second start where she swapped leads in the final 16th. And I mean, you would think maybe it's some greenness or immaturity if she does that in the beginning of a race or around a turn, not really a big deal. But to do that 2 times in a row in the final 16th, I don't know. I have some concerns that maybe the distance is going to be an issue, as she seems to get tired in the final 16th in her last 2 starts. But and it's not even really the pedigree being a practical joke that concerns me so much, but it's mostly just, how she finished up in those 2 races. But I thought the Bless the Broken ran a really good race though, as well.
Yeah. And you had highlighted that horse as having a really good pedigree for a wet track with the Uncle Mo and the Tappet mix. And you're right, that horse ran a really nice race. And it was interesting. You watch that replay. You're right. Nobody's really making up ground until the very end when, to some extent, Simply Joking starting to kind of tire. And some of the other horses are catching up a little bit. She earned an 87 buyer speed figure for that effort. And obviously a little bit higher than what we saw from Running Away. But I think similar concerns of looking forward, that was at 1 mile and 70 yards. The Oaks is 1 mile and 3/16. There's going to be more pace pressure. Again, feels like a bet against for me next time out with a horse that, like you said, didn't get an easy lead, but still broke on top as expected, got the trip she wanted. You all of a sudden, I could have envisioned a world in which she and Running Away go up against each other and just wear each other out by the, mile mark, basically. So we'll see. But yeah, an interesting performance, and obviously a big win for trainer Whit Beckman, who we saw on the Derby Trail last year with Honor Marie. And he's got a couple of nice fillies this year now on the Oaks Trail. So good to see that with Whit, who longtime assistant trainer for Todd Pletcher and Chad Brown. But then we had the Lecomte, which took place almost in the dark. It did take place in the dark, and the lighting is not spectacular on this preview, but this was won by Disco Time and the Brad Cox runner, jockeyed by Florent Giroux. And interestingly, the top 2 choices here had to overcome some really bad post positions and had to come from pretty well off the place, both Disco Time and Built, coming from much further back than they're normally accustomed to. But this was an interesting stretch run with Innovator, the Dwayne Lucas horse, who had faced some serious competition before this race, gone up against Chancellor McPatrick, Barnes, Owen Almighty, Sandman, and had kind of knocked heads with some really good ones. Jamie Torres gets out there on the front end, and it was almost like Seize the Gray over a sealed track, got out there on the lead, and you thought maybe you could take him gate to wire at a big price. But all of a sudden, down the middle of the track, on the far outside, you see Disco Time coming along. You see Built coming in as well, coming from off the pace. And ultimately, these 2 nab Innovator there in those final few strides. Disco Time getting the better of Built in this race. But I was really impressed by both those horses, despite the speed figures coming back rather slow. Disco Time earning a 78, Built earning a 77 buyer for their effort. So very, very slow. If you just use buyer speed figure, there's no way those two would be anywhere near a top 10 list. But what impressed me about both of those was A, they handled a wet track, which is not nothing. And B, they both showed a completely different dimension than they had previously. These were two horses that had always done the work up front and had two very easy trips in the grand scheme of things. This time, they both had to come from well off the pace. Disco Time particularly came from second to last, basically, and was able to make that charge down the middle of the track, very reminiscent of Sierra Leone to some extent over a sloppy sealed track at Fairgrounds in the Risen Star. But yeah, it was an interesting race. Like I said, none of those horses are jumping into my top 5. They're not jumping into my even top 10 probably, but still an impressive effort for her to do something they hadn't done before.
Yeah, and I thought that Maximum Security also ran a pretty good race. The Maximum Promise, I think is the
Yeah.
name,
Mm-hmm.
ran a pretty good race as well at 8 to 1, off a
Yeah.
pretty long layoff, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
that's definitely one to watch next time out, I think too.
Yeah, no, I think there's a few horses in that race. I'm interested to see them follow up. I also wouldn't be surprised if the next time Built and Disco Time run, you see a massive bump in their buyer speed figures. I think
Hmm.
organizations like Rags and Thoroughgraph are going to really like Disco Time's effort in particular because he gave up a ton of ground, and that's one of the things they try to look at. Is this is a horse that swung wide, had to give up
Hmm.
a ton of ground around both turns, and you end up kind of giving those horses a little bit of an edge next time out as long as they draw a decent way. So, listen, this transitions nicely into our top. We showed our top 5 last week. Now we're showing our top 6, and no real changes in our top 5 as none of those horses that ran over the last weekend really changed much. There hasn't been any news that a horse is off the Derby trail like we saw with Immersive a couple weeks ago, being taken off the Derby trail because of an injury. But we did want to add another horse just to kind of talk about it a little bit more. And for you, I'll start with you, Kaylie. You added another Bob Baffert horse in this one, Cipriani. Not just the name of a great restaurant that's tough to get reservations at, but also name of a pretty good horse, it turns out.
Yeah, this is a filly for Bob Baffert, who he's been working with only the boys. The only filly she's worked
Yeah.
with is Tenma, who seems to be a monster. So, I mean, Cipriani, I've been following along with this horse's works for a while. Ryan Anderson and Jackson, that I do a podcast with, actually told me about this horse and how,
Mm-hmm.
the word around is that this horse is a monster. She's working with the boys. She outworks them every day. So I went and watched all of those works. She's working with horses like Gaming, Romanesque, Madaket Road, San Saba, and from a couple I saw, she did outwork a few of them. Her pedigree is great for distance. She is a beautiful moving horse. I'm just really excited to see her run back after her maiden. I know, she broke her maiden going 6.5 furlongs, but she won by 8.5 lengths in hand. So I think that's pretty impressive. I wonder if he'll put Tenma and Cipriani up against each other, or maybe send them 2 different places. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really excited to see this horse run back. And, if you look up pictures of her, she's absolutely beautiful and built perfectly as well. So I'm really excited to see this one run.
Yeah, she's a very impressive mover. I know the video you had sent me that showed her just her kind of sales walk. I mean, she has a very good walk to her. She's got a big stride. I watched some of those workouts as well. She absolutely, holds her own with the boys and sometimes even out finishes them. So yeah, she's a pretty serious one. And it's interesting. Bob doesn't. I mean, we'll talk about a horse here in a little bit that's going to Arkansas for the Oaklawn prep this weekend in the form of Gaming. So Baffert doesn't have a problem breaking up his crop a little bit, sending some to Santa Anita, and sometimes they'll kind of run every other. So, okay, Tenma's going to run in this one, then the next one at Santa Anita, Cipriani's going to run in, and so forth. So, he's much like any other major trainer, is very good at juggling, these competing horses that might be ultimately all looking for the same end goal.
Mhm.
My number 6 is kind of falls into a very similar dynamic in terms of a horse for a big time trainer, in this case, Brad Cox, Patch Adams, who is running this weekend at Oaklawn in the Southwest Stakes. And this one just impressed me visually the last time out, just drawing off and just absolutely dominating a 7 furlong race, winning by over 10 lengths. And just completely under wraps, earning a 98 buyer speed figure for that effort. And this was a horse that you actually have a little bit of history with, because the very first video you made for NYRA Bets, you beat this horse in debut with a really big long shot, David of Athens. And then Patch Adams comes back to, win next time out. So a fun horse. I'm interested to see kind of how he does this time out. Cox has generally had his better horses at fairgrounds, so that is one concern, that this one's at Oaklawn. But again, I think when you come to the Derby preps, you got to break them up somehow. You're not going to have them running against each other. So one goes to fairgrounds, one goes to Oaklawn. But very promising horse that has fired off 3 consecutive 5-furlong bullets leading up to this race this weekend in the Southwest.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see this horse run back. I mean, those 3 back-to-back bullet works. He should be coming in here super dangerous and fired up. But yeah, similar to the Cipriani, I mean, definitely waiting and seeing, I know it's kind of early to put a horse like this, but when, they have such a dominant maiden win, and in Cipriani's case, I mean, I am more so looking and getting excited for the potential rather than, what they've shown already. So.
Absolutely. And I think people have to remember a horse, even a couple of years ago, like Mage, had barely debuted at this point. And so a lot of times you do see these late developing horses just all of a sudden make a rapid ascension. There's a horse this weekend that's debuting at Gulfstream Park in race 2, Disruptor for Todd Pletcher, who's a $1.15 million son of gun runner. That horse has got expectations. I'll just say that right now. You debut on the Pegasus undercard at 7 furlongs. There are going to be some expectations there. So if you remember, Acacia Clement pointed this out last year. That race featured Speakeasy and Victory Avenue, who were 2 very well thought of horses, who's unfortunately were derailed a little bit because of injuries, but they were immediately placed on the Derby trail. So sometimes you go from maiden special weight straight into the Derby trail. That's become the go-to move now more and more. But this top 5, top 6 list that we have, very apt for this weekend, because one of the horses on your top 6, Quietside, is running, and it is the morning line favorite in this weekend's Lone Oaks Prep, which is the Martha Washington at Oaklawn Park, going a mile and a 16th for those 3-year-old fillies. It's a short field. Quietside for John Ortiz draws the inside 8-5. This is an interesting one. I know this is a filly you really like, and having big expectations here in this race.
Absolutely, especially given the fact that she's facing not way less, but definitely less than she's faced in the past, going up against, fillies like Immersive, Quick Kick, few others. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think honestly, she might dominate this field. I know she drew the 1 hole. I don't really think I'm too concerned about that. She's a horse that likes to come from off the pace, and this also looks like a race with a lot of speed in it as well. And the Kenny McPeak horse that scratched last week is in here, who I think has a lot of early speed as well. So I think that it might set up really nicely for her. And I also like the fact that she's handled every single track that she's been to and surface. So no matter, she's going to Oaklawn for the first time. I don't know what the weather looks like, but I'm just not concerned because, she's handled Saratoga dirt, mud, Keeneland dirt, Churchill dirt. I mean, she should come in here pretty dangerous to handle Oaklawn for the first time, but definitely want to see her get into the winner's circle this time around.
Yeah, and in an absolutely stunning move, there is actually no rain in the forecast on Saturday at Oaklawn Park. So it is going to be a fast track. There's no rain the previous couple of days either, so it should be a dry, fast track for Saturday. But you're right, she's always run a good race. She's never run poorly. And she's usually had excuses when she hasn't run maybe as well as people expect. Like you said, she's been chasing a couple of Brad Cox monsters around in terms of Immersive and Good Cheer. So she's a very, very good filly. And I think very aptly is the morning line favorite. You mentioned Kenny McPeak's horse, Go Well's Delight, the number 5 in this race. That was a horse I was a little bit interested in the Silver Bullet Day. I'm a little bit interested maybe underneath. McPeak's numbers switching horses off Lasix as 3-year-olds in stakes races is atrocious. So just, keep that in mind. It's 1 for 37 over the last 5 years. Yikes. That's not the sort of numbers you like to see if you're trying to bet a long shot, but, could finish underneath and certainly have some good speed. And then Whit Beckman's other horse, Herb Laugh, coming off a win in the Untappable at Fairgrounds. hasn't really earned the big buyer speed figures yet, but has the ability to rate or go straight to the front. But I would imagine Quietside with Ricardo Santana Jr. aboard, who's an aggressive jockey, breaking from that inside rail. I imagine Ricardo's going to put her, if not right up on the lead, certainly sitting that pocket trip just off the pace. Because I don't think you want to be too far back in a 6-horse field at Oaklawn in this spot. So going to be a fun race, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, she's gonna have to break and find herself a bit closer. I mean, I think it's basically all speed horses in here besides her too.
Yeah.
So I think that if
Yeah.
she can find herself sitting closer to the rest of the field, maybe right off the leader or two back, I think she stands a fantastic chance here, especially facing again less than she's faced in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the boys' side of this weekend is the Southwest Stakes, which is a Grade 3 going a mile and a 16th for the 3-year-old Colts, and we have a field of 10 here. Your morning line favorite is Gaming, and it's for Bob Baffert, and this is not an uncommon move for Baffert to ship some of his horses to Oaklawn Park for the preps. He'll break them up that way. So there's some around in California, some are in Oaklawn. He's done this in years past with different horses. So again, not an unusual move to see Gaming back here, coming off a third place effort in the Los Al Futurity against a horse that I really, really like in journalism, but who has not worked since that race, unfortunately. And, I just don't know about Gaming because I just don't know about Game Winner, his sire. 1 for 22 in dirt routes at this point for his offspring, 2 for 46 first time out 2-year-olds. It just Game Winner has not really turned into that kind of prodigious sire or even kind of effective first crop sire. I think a lot of people have been hoping that he might. Again, for Gaming, it's just one of those things where the last effort was not great. The effort before that was admittedly a good second to Citizen Bull in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but, won the Del Mar Futurity going 7 furlongs. But I just am not as sold on this horse. Now, that said, typical Baffert, 58-3 bullet back on January 11th. So the horse is working out just fine. Like I said, I really like Patch Adams for Brad Cox in this race, the number 7 at 5-2, coming off of a huge maiden breaking victory last time out, has those 3 aforementioned bullet works. However, Cox at Oaklawn, this is stunning. 0 for 25 at this point. That is incredible that Cox has yet to get a single victory during the Oaklawn meet this year. So, 8 for 25 hitting the board, which is a bit better, but really has been ice cold. So, maybe in a race where you could make an argument against the top 2. I know there's a couple of other runners in this race in terms of Sandman and American Promise who you like in respectively.
Yeah, I think honestly, I agree about Gaming. And I mean, Patch Adams is going to take a ton of money.
Yeah.
When I go and actually bet this race, I'm betting American Promise for sure. That horse for Dwayne Lucas, I have really liked that horse since he debuted in the summer. He's just a beautiful horse, great pedigree. He's going to handle the distance. And obviously, Dwayne Lucas horses sometimes develop slower than other horses. He likes to take his time. And I think this horse now has a ton of races and learning experiences under his belt. And I think that, he's going to come in here and make some noise now with those races under his belt, stepping up against this field of horses. I think, at 6-1, maybe you might even get a little bit of a better price than that. Depending on how much money your top 2 choices and maybe even a horse like Sandman's going to take, who's also a nice horse. But I think that I'll be betting American Promise for sure.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, American Promise really fits the profile of Innovator, who we saw run a really good third in that Lecomte last weekend, and that a horse for Dwayne Lucas, who took a while to break its maiden and then finally did it last time out. But you look at who he's been running against. He's been running against some real nice horses in terms of Chancellor McPatrick, Render Judgment, Monet's Magic, Extradition, Publisher. He's been running against nice horses and now gets like I said, a nice, gate to wire win last time out over the surface at Oaklawn Park. So has been training down there, and Dwayne, no stranger to getting an upset at Oaklawn Park. Remember last year with Lemon Muffin getting the win down there in one of the Oaks preps. So Listen, that's a good one. And then Sandman, yeah, listen, he was one of the many very impressive 2-year-old Mark Cassie runners that we saw this summer up at Saratoga. I know some of the connections there with Sandman. That's a nice horse as well, who finished second, or I should say finished third, I should say, to Sovereignty in that street sense, and then came back and really looked good in that big time optional claiming race last time out at Oaklawn Park. And again, has that experience going 2 turns at Oaklawn.
Absolutely. And I think, the last race gave him a good confidence boost probably after going up against Sovereignty. So I think I'm excited to see him run in here as well. Definitely a nice horse. Definitely probably I'm going towards American Promise a bit more, but Sandman, I'm excited to see how he runs back here after that allowance race for sure.
And one horse I'll just very quickly mention on the far outside. I don't love the post draw, but Speed King, the number 10 horse, 15-1 for Ron Moquette. Why do I bring this horse up? Well, he lost to the horse Cole Battle. All Cole Battle did was come back and absolutely dominate the Smarty Jones Stakes at Oaklawn Park. And so interesting to see how Speed King runs in this race, having really run very competitively against Cole Battle in that springboard mile. Now, he's going to have to do it all the way up front, and that could be a little bit of a challenge going the mile on the 16th now, but still interesting to see how that one plays out. But should be a really fun field and a fun group of races for Saturday, in case you're not just watching the Pegasus World Cup. But hey, we got some great races at Oaklawn Park as well. But Kaylie, thank you so much for joining. Excited to talk to you again next week when I'm sure we'll recap some stuff that happened at the Pegasus, but really excited to recap a bunch of these Oaks and Derby preps and continue to add to our top 5, top 6, top 7 list moving forward.
Absolutely. I'm very excited and just want to end with a quick little note on the horse I have at number 1 for the Oaks, Tenma. Just put in a bullet work on the 18th and thought it was super impressive. So I definitely recommend going and watching that work. Just wanted to mention that. And Muhima and Good Cheer are also working together as well. So just a little
the cream is starting to rise to the top, I feel like, in the Oaks picture, maybe a little bit more than in the Derby picture. And so it's going to be a lot of fun, but you never know. Hey, Quietside could run a big race this weekend and suddenly, put herself right back up into major consideration. So gonna be a lot of fun. Thank you all for checking out our video. Exactly. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for our bets this weekend. But listen, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to press that like and subscribe button on NYRA Bets YouTube today. For Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.